One of the more interesting situations to happen in quite some time has been this whole Kyler Murray situation. The first thing that needs to be talked about in this situation is, can Kyler Murray play? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. While there absolutely is a big difference in between being able to play against NFL level defenses and being able to play against college level defenses, I'm going to show some plays from when he played against Alabama, as that pretty much is as close as you can get to an NFL level defense without playing in an actual professional league. On this play, he's going up against a cover 2 man, and the one route you're going to take a look at is that one right there, as that receiver is pretty much just going to fake as though he's running a pretty standard slant route to the middle of the screen, but then he's actually going to turn over and run straight down to the left side of the screen. The whole point of this play is just allow him to get over top of his assigned man, and it works decently well as he does have a bit of leverage. However, this still is far from an easy throw for Kyler Murray to make. He has to pretty much make a perfect throw, and if he underthrows this ball, it could be a very easy interception. However, Murray does make a great throw, and it's a great catch, which results in a first down. I know the receiver had to make a jumping catch to make that play, but the reality is, if that ball is a foot lower, then it could be intercepted. So Murray really has to throw it there, as only his receiver can make the catch, and that ended up being exactly what happened. He also has a great deep ball, like on this play for example. It's a cover 1 hole this time, and those are the routes that his receivers will be running. Take a look at that route right there, as it's going to be in the bottom half of the screen, meaning it'll be away from the safety coverage in the middle of the screen, and also if that receiver is able to get by his defensive back, it could be a big play for Murray and Oklahoma. The wide receiver doesn't get way past the defensive back, but Murray's going to take a shot anyways, and it's going to be a great throw to the sideline side of that receiver, which means that only the receiver can really make a catch on this one. It's either going to be a catch or it's going to be incomplete, and the receiver does end up making the catch, and they're able to pick up a huge gain. And while his passing ability certainly is there, we all know part of what makes him just so fun to watch is his ability to run around in the pocket. Like, take this play for example. The way this play is going to work for Alabama is that the defensive tackle is going to basically be running in between the 2 offensive linemen that are the center and right guard, which should hopefully force a double team, and then they can simply have their other interior linemen pull over underneath them and get the Kyler Murray for a potential sack. But that doesn't end up working out too well for Alabama. Oklahoma's right guard does a very good job of realizing what Alabama is doing and not falling into the double team and making sure that he still stays back to block that interior lineman. Also worth mentioning that another Alabama player wasn't actually rushing on this play, but he's actually going to be covering the halfback, and he was just faking as though he's rushing to draw Oklahoma's right tackle over to the right side of the screen. This now means that it's a 3-man rush, and Kyler Murray is certainly looking to run the ball here. One thing he notices is he does have a hole right there that he could try to run through and potentially pick up a ton of yards. However, that's actually not going to work out too well. An Alabama defender does a very good job of closing up that gap, and Kyler Murray does a very good job of realizing that the gap is closed up and not then forcing himself to continue running in that direction. Typically, if you're going to run, you don't want to hesitate. However, this isn't hesitating, this is just stopping and doing something else because he realizes that wasn't going to work. He then pulls to the bottom half of the screen, is able to run very well and able to pick up a first down, and even slides after picking up the first down to make sure he doesn't take a hit. I mean, this is just a great piece of running by a quarterback. I don't know how effective this would be in the NFL, but I do think it goes to show that if he can make plays like this in college, he should at least be able to make decent plays in the NFL with using his feet. Probably the number 1 team that gets talked about with Kyler Murray is the team that has the number 1 overall pick, and that's the Arizona Cardinals. But in my opinion, I think the Arizona Cardinals drafting Kyler Murray would be an absolutely huge mistake. Like, if we take a look at this play, for example, the Detroit Lions are going to have a 5-man blitz on this play, meaning that all of the Cardinals' offensive linemen have one-on-one matchups. If you take a look, almost instantly, Rosen's in trouble, as there is the edge rusher on the bottom half of the screen crashing in and nearly making a play on him. And also, if you take a look, no receiver deep downfield is anywhere close to being open. There's also an interior lineman doing a very good job of winning his one-on-one matchup in the middle of the field, so this means that Rosen has to step up to avoid the pressure behind him, but now there's going to be more pressure in front of him, and he ends up getting sacked. Maybe he could have thrown the ball away at this point, but the reality is, this was just a play that wasn't working at all from all sides. I just personally think it would be a huge mistake to draft Kyler Murray when you have such a lack of talent on the offensive side of the ball. They do have Larry Fitzgerald and David Johnson. David Johnson, of course, is great, and Larry Fitzgerald is one of the best to ever play the game. However, he is getting up there in age, so it's really tough to see how much they can really affect the team, especially when their offensive line has played so terrible last season, and they still have a lack of depth in receivers. I just think the Cardinals have a lot more positions to fill, and I don't think Kyler Murray is going to help them that much. I think Rosen is already really good, and I don't think Kyler Murray is going to be that much of a difference. Another one of those real reasons why I think the Cardinals shouldn't go ahead and draft Kyler Murray is because there's just a clear-cut, obvious choice for a number 1 overall pick in Nick Bosa. I mean, this is about as clear-cut as it should get, and I just think it seems like an obvious pick to me. When you already have a quarterback who has a lot of question marks, why draft another quarterback where it still has some question marks, maybe just a little bit less question marks, and you have an obvious choice to get an elite player on that first overall pick? The reality is, with a first overall pick, you expect to get an all-pro with that pick. That's what the expectations are. And when you have a guy who seems to be a clear-cut all-pro type player, you gotta take him. Especially when he could fit so well into that Arizona Cardinals offense, because this now means that teams couldn't just double-team Chandler Jones all the time. And Chandler Jones is an elite pass rusher in my opinion, and I don't think that's too much of a controversial opinion. Take a look at this play of how Chandler Jones can be so effective. I mean, ideal plan placement for a tackle on this play would be to get your right hand on Chandler Jones' left side of his body, and then get your left hand onto Chandler Jones' right shoulder pads. However, take a look at what Chandler Jones does here. He simply just sticks one arm out and pretty much puts it on that tackle's chest. Also, that tackle is Eric Fisher, who is far from a slouch, and this now means that Chandler Jones can simply push him back, and now Fisher has nowhere to move his hands, and he can't get great hand placement on Jones, and if you can't get great hand placement against Chandler Jones, he can easily beat you just about every time, and he's able to easily get to the quarterback and pick up a sack. One team I could definitely see Kyler Murray going to would be the New York Giants. However, one problem I could see with that would potentially be the Giants' offensive line. They don't have a great one, although I did just make a trade to get a good player who I might make a video on in the future. However, it is worth mentioning that their offensive line last year at least didn't play very well. One thing that was a real problem for the Giants all of last season was it was very easy to game plan to create pressure against them. Like, take what the Eagles did here. As you see, they have an interior lineman all the way over into 7 technique and an edge rusher into 9 technique. This now means that it's going to make it pretty much impossible for a center to get over and double team a guy here, pretty much forcing there to be 2 one-on-one blocks on that side of the screen. Not only is one of them able to win their assigned matchup, but they both are, and they easily get the Manning and get a sack out of it. I know Kyler Murray is great at running around in the pocket, but the reality is the second Eli Manning saw that there was pressure, he was already getting sacked. This happened in no time at all. So even Kyler Murray, who's great at running around in the pocket, wouldn't have been able to do much on a play like that. I do think that he could have his benefits with the Giants though. Like, take this play for example. It's a cover 2 zone, and those are the routes that the Giants receivers will be running. And if you take a look, there is a section of that route right there where there is a small window in that gap in coverage where Odell Beckham Jr. could end up getting open. If you take a look, this isn't a traditional cover 2 zone. This is more closer to a Tampa 2 where the middle linebacker is playing very far deep, meaning that the window to get to Odell is a lot smaller, but Manning is still going to try to hit it. However, the throw just isn't quite good enough and it ends up getting intercepted. Could Kyler Murray have made this throw? I don't know, maybe not. It's a very small window, and who knows how good you could do it, but he certainly could have done a better job than Eli did on that play, and he could probably make some of these deep throws that the Giants like to run. One team I definitely could see going after Kyler Murray, although it would probably require them to trading up to get him, would be the Miami Dolphins. They appear to be getting ready to get rid of Tannehill at any moment, so I definitely could see them maybe taking a chance on Kyler Murray if they can find a way to get a pick high enough to draft him. Although it's worth being mentioned, once again, this is a team with a very bad offensive line. Like on this play, for example, as you see, a tackle has a one-on-one matchup against J.J. Watt, which is admittedly already a bad situation. You really don't want to have one-on-one blocks against J.J. Watt, but it's going to go very poorly for the Dolphins here. Watt does a very good job of blowing past everybody and easily getting to the quarterback for a sack. If you take a look, they actually did have a receiver open, but it doesn't matter because you have no time to get it to that receiver. Your receivers can get as open as they want to get, but if you're getting sacked in 1 second, it doesn't matter. The Miami Dolphins receivers actually did have a tendency to get pretty decently open in a lot of games. I mean, they could definitely use a true number 1 receiver, but they're not scrubs out there. They definitely have some guys who can make plays and can get open, and if Kyler Murray can run around in the pocket long enough to get to some of these guys that can get open, it could be a good thing for them. To me, I don't think my real problem with it would be that I don't think he can be effective with a not great offensive line, but I think that having a bad offensive line can really hurt a quarterback's development. Like, take this play for example. It's a cover 2 zone, and Houston's actually going to drop an extra man back into coverage. And if you take a look, those are the routes that the Dolphins receivers will be running, and there's going to be 2 routes that are hitting gaps in coverage on each side of the field. This is Osweiler, and he definitely looked a little bit scared during this play. It was just a 3-man rush, but despite that, he takes a check down almost as soon as he possibly can. He doesn't really take the time to read the play and then make a decision. He just instantly tries to get the ball out. However, since Houston had an extra man in coverage, it ends up being easy for them to stop that receiver for no gain. While Osweiler certainly is no Kyler Murray, I think it just goes to show that plays like that can really hinder a quarterback's development and can really make a quarterback think that they have to get the ball out much faster than they actually do and that they don't have time to read plays even though they absolutely should be reading plays. So out of those 3 teams, I think the Cardinals makes absolutely no sense, and I think the Dolphins and Giants make some sense. However, they'd have to work on some other holes if they're really going to actually be competitive in the near future. But there's one team that I think would make perfect sense to get Kyler Murray, and that team is the Washington Washington Redskins. I mean, after losing Alex Smith, they had a complete nosedive last season, but a lot of people forget they were actually having a pretty good season up until that point. I really think he could fit in perfectly with that Redskins offense, and I wouldn't be opposed to the Redskins at all trading up to try to get Murray. Take a look at this play of how the Washington Redskins were able to be effective. It's a cover 3 zone, and those are the routes that their receivers will be running, and take a look at that route right there. If you take a look, the safety who's in charge of covering that top right-hand corner of the screen, it's actually going to be focused on a receiver running in that direction, which now means that the top right-hand corner of the screen could be open. There's also a safety covering the receiver on the bottom half of the screen. But what Alex Smith is going to do here is sort of fake as though he's going to be throwing it to that bottom half of the screen, which is going to draw the safety who's in the middle of the screen down to the bottom of the screen, which is now going to leave a pretty big gap right in the middle of that field right there, and Alex Smith is able to throw an easy touchdown here. The Washington Redskins are kind of a team right now that could be just one quarterback away. Their defense played very well at times last season, and their offense has pieces. But those are just some of the teams I could see going after Kyler Murray. I know some people have talked about the Raiders going after Kyler Murray, but personally I don't see that one at all, which is because I think Derek Carr is very good, and I'd be very surprised if they do go after him. But I suppose it is possible, but I don't see it happening, so that's why I didn't include it in this video. So that's just what I think, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys think.